Okay, my name is Marshall Warneke, and I'm a church planter. And right now I'm in Salt Lake City, Utah, and I was born May 1st, 1944. I grew up in Texas on a ranch.
What was your childhood like?
Hard work.
When did you get saved?
January the 7th, 1965.
And what took place for you to get saved? What happened around that time?
Well, someone gave me a gospel tract, and I read it about 10 or 20 times, and I got saved from it. So the tracts work. If it got me saved, it can get anybody saved.
How many years after did you get called to preach?
The night I got saved, God called me to preach.
And what were the events around that? What happened?
Well, I didn't want to. Yeah, but God caught up with me. He knows how. Yeah, so I finally did. And what got me to preach was I was working in the oil field. We were working in bringing in oil wells or gas wells. And I was standing over one and bringing it in, and it blew up. And it had 5,000 pounds of pressure on it. It threw me out across the sky, and I landed out in the field. While I was laying there, I heard God say in a loud voice, "I'll let you live to preach." Then I'm thinking, I better get away. It's going to burn. I'll burn up. So I got up and ran and fell down again. And God spoke again. He said, "I've let you live to preach, or are you going to preach?" I said, "Yeah, Lord." And I left for Bible college a few days later and went to Missouri to go to school. Yeah.
And what year did you go to Bible college?
I got there in '68 and graduated. I graduated in '71 or '72. Yeah.
And how many churches have you planted?
I probably 10, and I've helped start hundreds.
Can you tell me maybe a story or so of one of those churches you've planted? Maybe something that has happened, or?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked, and I'll tell you a story. I felt like I should go to Montana, and God called me there, and I went there. And so I was planting a church. My goal was to win the state to the Lord. Now, that's a big job. That was my goal. So anyway, I was planting churches, and I knew it would. How am I going to ever win this state to the Lord? It's big. Montana's the third biggest state. And so I weren't making much progress. And one day I went to the hospital to lead a guy to the Lord because he was going to die. And there was a man there. And so I went ahead and got in beside the bed, was against a wall, so that the guy couldn't get out because I wanted to win him to the Lord. And if he'd get out, he'd have to step over the guy that was dying. So anyway, I did. I had him cornered, and finally he wouldn't get saved, but he said he'd come to church. I said, "I'll pick you up if you'll come." So I went ahead and decided, well, I need to go see him now. I promised him I'd come. I'm going to go get him Sunday morning. So Sunday morning I went to get him, and I knocked on his door, and nobody answered. I knocked again, nobody answered. And I shook the door, and so I finally decided, well, I'll go on in, and he's probably sleeping. And I opened the door and walked in. He didn't lock it. And I walked up. I went in every room. I found him sleeping in bed. And his pants was hanging on the bedpost. So I shook him and handed him his pants. I said, "I promised you I'd come pick you up, and I keep my promises. I'm here." And he said, "Let me brush my teeth." And so he went around the bathroom, brushed his teeth. He got back. I handed him his pants and took him to church. And the next week it was the same thing. I had to wake him up and give him his pants. And he came. He got saved after about a month later. And so he's saved now. And so time went by. We went ahead and worked with him and and discipled him. That's what we did. And then after that, he came. He said, "I have to talk to you." So he came one night to the church, and I met him there. And he said, "God's called me to preach." I said, "Well, Dallas," his name is Dallas Doyle. I said, "Dallas, who's going to hear you preach? You've been married 3 times, and you've been in prison for 2 years because you wrote a hot check out and put the governor's name on it." And he was also the town drunk. He'd run up and down the streets naked when he'd get drunk. And so they would also put him in jail. He had his own private cell they put him in because he was always getting in jail. So they put him in the same cell. He was a musician. He could play the piano and sing. He could play a guitar and sing. He was an expert at it. Well, anyway, so he said, I said, "Dallas, you can't preach. Nobody will come hear you." He said, I'll be back. So a week later, he came back. And he said, "I know that God wants me to preach." He said, "Watch." And we were meeting in the church building. He went up and stood on the pulpit and started preaching. Well, I couldn't deny that he weren't called to preach. I said, "Who will hear you now?" He said, "I've got it figured out." I said, "How?" He said, "We don't have a rescue mission in our city." He said, "I want to start a rescue mission. And in a rescue mission, you have to come and you have to go to the services. Then you can eat. Yeah, and they feed you." And so he said, I said, "Where do you want to do it?" He said, "We're going to start it in my house." He had an apartment house. And so he did. And so people started getting saved, and he was getting people to come, and they would come. And all of it was growing. One day the police stopped by, and they thanked him because they'd get people come, vagrants, and they didn't know what to do with them. They'd leave them out on the edge of town and be in the snow, in the cold weather. They said, "We have a place to take them now." We feel good about that. Well, people kept getting saved and all, and his mission kept growing, and it got bigger. And somebody donated to him a building that had an apartment on top for people to sleep in, and he could sleep in there too. And now he had a building, and it was growing. And then they closed the mines in our city, and people were out of work. The miners started losing their cars and their boats and their snowmobiles and everything else, and then they couldn't pay their house. They needed food. And so our people were scraping food together, everything they could, to take down to the mission so he could give them out. So now our senator, his name was Mansfield, every state was to go ahead and turn in somebody in their state, every senator was, in their state, who did a good thing for humanity. Because every 2 years they would give out this award called the Jefferson Award. It's one of the biggest awards that anybody could win that our country gives away. And it's a valuable thing. Well, anyway, so he came to me and he said, "I'm going to Washington." I said, "What for?" He said, "They picked me to do something valuable for the humanity because of the mission and people we feed." I said, "Now, Dallas, you can forget that. Somebody will win that from New York or Chicago, but you don't have a chance." He said, "But at least I'm getting a free trip." So I took him to the airport when it was time, and they flew him to Washington. And they had a special party for him, a banquet. And the person sitting beside him was John Wayne. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he's a well-known cowboy preacher, a cowboy actor. And then across from him was another famous movie star, and so that's where he sat. And they were going ahead and working to go ahead and get somebody to want to give that award away. And so they saved him till last to come up and give his speech. And he got up, they already had it picked who would win. And they had him pick the win. He'd done the most for humanity in America in those 2 years. So I picked him up at the airport. Well, the next morning, that was on a Saturday, in the Sunday paper on the front page, it had his picture. His picture was there. It said, "Native Son wins the Jefferson Award." And there he was. He had that big gold award hanging around his neck and all. And then that was in the paper all over the state, because that was their boy, you know. Every city put it in. And they were proud of that. Well, when he got back, the phone started ringing. Everybody wanted him to come to their church and preach from every town. So he went and preached in every town. He'd come back, I'd say, "Dallas, how many got saved?" He'd say 10 or 15. Sometimes he'd say 30. He was a soul winner. We taught him to win souls. That's what everybody should know, is how to win a soul. If they're saved, they need to know how to do that, because we teach that to all our people. And so he was going all over the state, to every town, and preaching in the churches that were there and winning them to the Lord. He won thousands to the Lord. And then, and when they had a parade, they wanted him to come and lead the parade in the cities that had parades. Anyway, he went thousands to the Lord. About 15 years later, I got a letter from him. He had, I don't know, I think 40,000, 50,000 people got saved and all. And he continued to run his mission and all. And so what happened was I just said, I got to go see him. I got to thank him for what he did for the Lord and what he did for our church. And I didn't get to go. I got held back. So I decided I'm going to go next summer for sure. The next summer I went to see him. I knocked on his door, and a lady came to the door. I said, "I'm looking for Dallas Dahl." She said, "He's dead. He died a few months ago." Well, I felt like a dog because I didn't get there on time. But he did a great job, and through the ministry of the church, thousands were saved. And that's what a church is supposed to do, to reach the lost any way they can. But if you have a vision, want to reach your state, God will make a way so you can reach it. And he reached it for us. And then I left for Salt Lake City, and I knew I could go after he was winning all those souls. And that's where I'm at now, doing the same thing, getting everybody saved I can.
And how many years have you been in the ministry?
I've been in the ministry for 54 years.
And how old are you now?
I take that back. I've been in the pastor 54 years. I've been in the ministry almost 60 years. Yeah.
And how old are you now?
I'm 81 years young.
If you could give some advice to a preacher, what would it be?
Well, the best advice I can give him is to make sure he's saved. And the second advice I give him is to make sure he has the King James Version Bible 1611. And then the third advice I can give him, to go where God wants him to go. And that's what he needs to do. He needs to stay right there and not run around different churches and take different churches. He needs to take people right there. And now here's the reason I say that. Because I've been now in Salt Lake City for 54 years, in Salt Lake City. And I'm winning people that I ministered to 40 years ago. And if I was there, they wouldn't get saved. But they come and they look for me and want to get saved. So we show them how, and they get saved. So you got to get in a place and stay there. Don't pack up and run away. Stay right there and do what God called you to do. God does not make mistakes. Now, I left Montana because I felt like I'd done my duty there and met my goal. The great multitude saved and all. And so that's what you have to do, is to stay right there where you're at
Any advice for a member of it?
Oh, a layman in the church? If you're a layman and you're in a church, you do the same thing. Because God planted you in that town where your church is, and He didn't plant you in New York. He planted you right there, and that's where you need to be. And you need to serve in your church. You need to do everything you can. Go through every door God opens, and you need to be a soul winner, win souls, and bring them to God's house. Now, the Bible tells us how many souls you should bring. Jesus said, "My sheep hear my voice, and I hear them." Now, that means you're a sheep. Well, what does a sheep do? Every year it has 2 babies, and they bring them into the flock. So you should bring at least 2 every year. You need to win them and bring somebody in, at least 2. Maybe you can do more, but that's what you're to do. That's biblical. That's in the Bible. Thank you. It was an honor to get to be here and get to talk to you today, and get to make this tape and all. And God bless you.